I think that I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just pointing out. I think that I think one of logistics would be your challenge of something like that, because the amount of above ground gold is changing constantly. And if you had a currency, for example, let's say that you had a gold currency or a gold-backed currency again, the amount of gold mining would all over the world would explode. It would be everywhere. People everywhere would be doing this because the U.S. is. If the U.S. did this, a lot of the countries would have to follow suit. They look to look to the states. I mean, just keep this in mind. Americans kind of forget this, I think. For all of our faults, and Americans are deeply flawed people, there's no question about that. The Americans are extremely creative people overall. Not so much right now because it's very suppressed, but they're pretty creative. And their system worked extremely well. And other world leaders do know this, that the idea of a constitution and a Bill of Rights produced wealth for the average person, the like of which this world had never seen at that time. They'd never seen that kind of wealth. For the average person, which is really important that's understood, because it's not a flex to just say we've got a handful of billionaires in our country. That isn't a flex. Lots of countries have, the El Jefe who owns everything or something like that. Yeah, lots of countries have that. It's when you have your poorest people are extremely wealthy. That's a flex. And other countries do know that. So if the U.S. were to say, okay, that's it. Assuming you had competent people that were in leadership positions, which that ain't going to happen for a lot of other reasons I'm not going to go into right here. But if you had competent people and you said, that's it, we're done with this. We're done with this fiat nonsense. We're done with this disaster. This has been a complete and total mess, and it has ruined and demoralized the entire country. It has totally demoralized the concept of ownership, for young people. It really has. We're going to change that, and we're going to do something real here. We're going to go back to a more solid, a more solid system. The rest of the world would go into shock and see that, and they'd have to do that. So you would constantly be changing the amount of supply and demand, and so it would be. So I think ultimately to shorten up what I was saying, because I'm just answering you specifically on this one. Anybody else is just listening in. I'm just pointing out that I think the logistics would be a tricky thing to do. And then there's also the problem of fake gold, taking gold bars that are, or tungsten bars, and then putting gold plate on them, and then calling them gold because the weights are close. So I mean, these are some of the challenges that go with it. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but it'd be very difficult. It would be easier to use a digital currency. I mean, this isn't a commercial for Bitcoin. It's really not. I'm just pointing out the logic behind it. It would be easier to use a digital currency that is audited every 10 minutes and the entire world can see it. And on top of that, the amount of above ground, if you want to call it Bitcoin versus below ground Bitcoin, is we already know what the outcome is. The outcome is 2.1 quadrillion sats. We already know the outcome. Even if it is in 2144 or something like that is when the last one's supposed to be mined, it's still, what it's going to be. And then, of course, the network itself has to continue to maintain itself, and then there's cost involved there because it does use energy, which is true, that isn't a bad thing. It isn't a bad thing. That gives it the idea of okay, you still have to be able to transact with it. So, yeah, I mean, it's so to answer your question on gold, yes, I think the problem with gold becomes logistics. If people wanted to go to a gold coin and just wanted to trade gold coin in the open marketplace, physical gold all day long, I'm down for that, right? We can just go back in time a bit and do it the old school way. I'm okay with that, and I'm being serious. I'm not. That isn't me making a wry statement. I mean, I'm actually saying, yeah, I'm totally cool with that. But I think that there's other ways to do it, and again, in terms of speed, because we do have, for the most part, people are used to a global economy now. For better or for worse, people are they're used to being able to buy something that may not be manufactured here in the States for whatever reason. Even though I personally I'm a big fan of a lot of deregulation, particularly in small businesses, so that way they can manufacture this stuff. There's no reason why Americans can't manufacture stuff. Americans manufactured everything for a long time. They can certainly go back to doing something like that. And I think ultimately just my personal opinion, if you actually had a real economy like that, an honest economy and an honest currency like that was global in nature, such as Bitcoin, I think that most manufacturing would go back to in-house. I think most of it, there would be a lot of vertical integration. That's for my capitalist people, my commie people. There would be lots of ownership of the means of production. That would be on a small level, and I don't mean at the state level. I'm talking about seriously at the small level, like you, Mike, the business owner who has his 8 employees and that are also your friends and they just work for you, and you're the owner, but you're responsible to sell stuff. You're responsible to keep bringing customers in, but you're also giving them jobs, and everything kind of works together. And that's how a lot of small businesses have operated, particularly family businesses.